Well, I think what Professors Turley and Rosencrantz said is accurate, or would help member standing. Yes, you have to win elections. Something that hasn't been mentioned is getting Democrats to care about this issue when there's a Democratic president, and getting Republicans to care about these issues when there's a Republican president.
And that's one of the things.
Right now, I don't know if anyone who's watching this at home has noticed, but all the Democratic members of the committee have left the room. I think they left like 20 minutes. We're 3.5 hours into this hearing. They're obviously not as interested in this as
And finally, I think one of our problems here is we have a president right now who is not willing to work with Congress. I think that's what we just had a Democrat walk in. That's not willing to work with Congress.
I retract my statement. My apologies.
I've talked to a constituent who worked for the Bush White House, whose job it was to lobby with Congress. And I've met with somebody from the Obama administration exactly twice in 3 years. And I do think it's the President's duty to engage. I had a question on that, but I'm out of time. But I do think there is a disappointment with the President not being engaged. Mr. Cannon.
But if I may, Republicans are very concerned about executive power when the executive is a Democrat. Democrats are very concerned about executive power abuses when the executive is a Republican. I think that the members of each party need to care about these issues a lot more when their own if someone from their own party occupies the White House, and not just when someone from the opposite party.
Thank you. I see my time has expired. Chairman Gowdy, I'll give it back to you.
Thank the gentleman from Texas. Chair would now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, sir. I have obviously missed some of this hearing, although I've caught some of it on the magic of video, television. And I was interested, the gentleman from Mr. Cannon had mentioned the possibility of impeachment or some impeachable offenses. Is that accurate?
I can't remember if I brought that up. I may have.
And in what context would you have brought that up?
I think in response to a question. I'm not sure if I did or if someone else had mentioned.
Can anybody on the panel refresh his memory?
I think what I brought up was a constitutional amendment convention. I'm not sure. I don't think I brought up impeachment. But certainly, I agree that it's certainly a tool that the Congress can use to restrain the executive.
Constitutional amendment. You suggested we should have some type of convention?
The question I was asked was, about ways of the Congress or the people can restrain the executive, and I offered that as one way.
That's never been done before, has it?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah. Anybody else on the panel have any thoughts about impeachment?
I mentioned impeachment earlier. We've been asked several times questions about possible remedies if we find that a president is behaving lawlessly. I've not said that this president has or that these examples rise to that level, but the ultimate constitutional check on a lawless president is impeachment and ultimately election.
Right, that's the check. But nobody's suggested that the president's certainly not committed any impeachable offenses, I presume. Is it? Nobody here thinks that. Is that right? Mootness? Mr. Cannon?
Well, I don't know. As Professor Rosencrantz mentioned, I think an important element is that that whatever crimes or misdemeanors he's committed were committed knowingly, and whether there is a pattern of abuse of his office. And in my testimony, you'll see that I actually lay out a pretty consistent pattern whereby President Obama has ignored and tried to rewrite portions of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And I think that the most egregious of these is the one where he is implementing the law in a way such that he is taxing and borrowing and spending over the next 10 years. $700 billion that this Congress never authorized. Now, you may disagree with my interpretation of the law. I know Mr. Lazarus does, but I think that you and I and Mr. Lazarus would all agree that if a president were trying to tax and borrow and spend $700 billion without congressional authorization, that might be an impeachable offense.
Does anybody here think any of the actions of the Bush administration in going into Iraq without actual knowledge of weapons of mass destruction or anything else would have been an impeachable offense? Mr. Lazarus, you seem to be nodding.
No, I was just disregard the nod behind the curtain or in front of the curtain. I was very upset by that, but whether it's impeachable is a political decision that Congress would have to make.
Mr. Turley?
Well, the war powers issue does come closest for me for both President Obama and President Bush. The reason I don't think it rises to that level is because court decisions have made this field so much of a mess. First of all, by judicial passivity in not reviewing it, and by the use of historical practice. So I think it's very hard to maintain an impeachable offense when you have that degree of ambiguity. I don't believe that ambiguity is found in the Constitution. I believe that President Obama violated the Constitution in Libya, for example. But because of that history and that precedent, they can claim that they were acting on a reasonable interpretation of the law.
Thank you. Mr. Gowdy, I congratulate you, I guess, on South Carolina's victory, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I got to be careful how I respond to that since they're both state schools. I thank the gentleman from Tennessee and will now recognize